We know the opponent that we have in the Sugar Bowl. It's Notre Dame. Who are they? What do they do well? What do we do well against them? We give you our first look ahead for Georgia's playoff matchup on New Year's Day next. Lock on Bulldogs.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. He is Clint. I am Daniel. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel.com. Make every moment more. More on them, our wonderful partners at FanDuel, in a moment. Thanks for being here today. Thanks for being a first listener. Thanks for making us the first listen of your day. Thanks for being an everydayer. We really appreciate it. We appreciate you. Grateful that you are here. And Clint, it's been a long time coming. Let's jump into this Sugar Bowl matchup. We've talked about who we want to play. We've talked about who we would prefer to play. Spoiler alert, it was Indiana. I think if you watched the game last Friday night, you know exactly why it was Indiana, because Notre Dame's a heck of a lot better than Indiana is, like unequivocally, full stop. So one of us was right in our prediction of who would win. One of us was wrong. Both of us were wrong in our prediction of who would cover.
Man.
Kurt Signetti tried to come back and make it interesting at the end. But I think even because of that, I think if you look at the stats of that game, Clint, they're very skewed. Notre Dame's defense absolutely and unequivocally shut down Indiana, full stop, that game. You could look at the stats and you could see, Indiana passed for 215 yards, albeit in a losing effort. No. That is a bunch of fourth quarter garbage time stats that Indiana was able to accumulate when Notre Dame was basically just trying to run out the clock and get out of the stadium with no further injuries. And so you're not going to sell me on anything positive that Indiana was able to do against Notre Dame in that game, because I watched the game.
I had eyes and I know football, and Indiana was outclassed at every snap of the football.
Yeah. And so there are no, Indiana could do this. Maybe Georgia could capitalize on that. That's not the route you're going to be able to take. Indiana was completely and totally dominated in every sense of the word. Now, does that mean Georgia's going to be completely and totally dominated in every sense of the word? No, of course it doesn't. We're a different team than Indiana. But how we're different is going to dictate how we will be able to potentially have success against Notre Dame. But let me get one thing out of the way, big picture. We're going to break down. We're going to go to, our typical look ahead.
This is Notre Dame picture look ahead first. We're going to get nitty gritty details later, but just kind of a feel. This is our first look ahead.
Yeah. There's no reason you can't have multiple looks. You understand? Like, we could look. There's nothing wrong with looking, Clint. We're just looking.
If I'm going to buy a car, I'm going to go 3 times. I'm going to check that thing out, man.
Make sure that it's got an engine and wheels on it, for example.
Because if it
unlike Tennessee, who failed to do that inspection.
Josh Heupel, you're a joke. Like, we know you're a joke, but you have now entered Stoops at Kentucky level joke. You have a ceiling. Tennessee fan, your ceiling is Heupel, and it's not great.
Tennessee Twitter called it a historic season that they had. That's my favorite tweet of the year.
It's like you guys didn't learn from making the coffee table book first time around.
Historic season. Print them. Call the publisher. Print them. Okay. Big picture thought.
Yeah.
We're going to get in our picks for the game and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Don't hear what I'm not saying, but do hear what I am saying. And that is, if you are a person who believes Notre Dame can't win big games like this, because, and here's your reason for it.
Yeah.
Notre Dame can't win big games like this. They're Notre Dame. Let me tell you exactly who you are.
Yeah.
You're a person who said Clemson is always going to Clemson. Remember when Clemsoning was a thing?
Oh,
when it was like, oh, Clemson. yeah, they'll be come in and they'll have a little success, but then they're gonna blow it. They always blow it. And then little old Dabo came out, beat Alabama twice, won a couple of national championships, was able to do some things. And all the people who said Clemson's going to Clemson, well, until they don't. You're the person, Georgia fan, if you say Notre Dame can't win these games, who says Georgia hasn't won a national championship in 40 years. So, of course, Georgia's not going to win a national championship. They're Georgia. How could they? They're never going to do it. They haven't done it in 40 years. Notre Dame, it turns out, hasn't been relevant in college football, really, in like 35 years.
Oh, no.
Oh, but see, it's the same narrative.
It is.
Notre Dame team is not those Notre Dame teams. Nope. This Notre Dame team is not the Notre Dame team from 2012 that Georgia was one play away from being able to crush for the national championship after the heartbreaking loss in the SEC championship game. This is not that Notre Dame team. They are not fraudulent. This is not a fraudulent team. This is a good football team.
It's a complete team, top to bottom, Daniel.
They're good. They have a good quarterback. They have a good defense. They have a good offensive line. They have a good running game. They have a good secondary. They're a good football team. They have good football players. They're well coached. They have a great offensive coordinator.
Yes, they do.
They are good. So my first point, Clint, is that this Notre Dame team has nothing to do with that 2012 Notre Dame team, with the other Notre Dame teams that have fraudulently gotten into the playoff. This is not that team. My second point is much like my first point.
Okay.
This Notre Dame team is not the same team that lost to Northern Illinois. Please stop bringing up Northern Illinois.
And that's to us too, because we talked about that going into the playoff. We talked about how funny it was. This team has grown. This team has changed. It is nowhere near that same team, top to bottom, talent wise. Hope you guys know the composite rankings. And again, it's not just all talent and Joe's on the team, but they're the 9th most talented team in the nation. 9th most amongst the teams. Like Clemson's down at 11, Texas is at 6, Ohio State at 5, Oregon 3. Georgia
Texas is
1.
Notre Dame's at 9. People talk about Texas as if it is like this juggernaut of a football team. Talent everywhere. The narrative about Notre Dame is ridiculous. They had an absolutely abysmal out-of-body experience when they played Northern Illinois. You understand that, albeit against a very easy schedule. And we'll talk about the strength of schedule. We'll talk about whether or not they've played anybody and what that means and all of that stuff. Apart from that one game, this is a 13-0 football team right now at Notre Dame. That Northern Illinois game it is not only irrelevant to this game, it is the best thing that has ever happened to Coach Freeman. It is the best thing that has ever happened to that Notre Dame football program because it changed the trajectory of their season.
Yep.
Like, stop looking at this Notre Dame team as if they are a fraudulent blip and don't deserve to be here. I'm not going to tell you that they're going to roll through Georgia or that whatever. Again, I'm not making any predictions about this game. I'm just saying you have to have a starting point that is objectively sound. And a lot of Georgia fans are going into this game saying, it's Notre Dame. They're Notre Dame. We're Georgia. So we just win.
No,
we win.
It doesn't work that way. Again, and
do you know who else thought that?
Who else?
Alabama in 2021 in the national championship game.
See,
that's who thought that. We're Alabama. They're Georgia. We win the game. Do you? Do you win the game?
Slow your roll on that. Don't become that fan. We're going to come back after this, talk about more first look ahead. But first, this. And this is, in fact, Rocket Money. Rocket Money help you find subscription you forgot about and you weren't paying for twice. Definitely happened to us. We had a few subscriptions that didn't even realize we were paying for. Rocket Money helped make it easy to track them. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. This app helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and help lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, spending habits, even goals you want to hit. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and saved over 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. rocketmoney.com/locked on.
All right, Clint, I gave you my couple big picture starting points. Where do you want to start big picture when you think about Notre Dame, when you think about Georgia, you think about the Sugar Bowl matchup? Where does your mind go?
My mind goes to, I want to give you a little clue. The Midwest and the South are not
here he goes.
close cultural things, okay?
Excuse me, I'm just going to settle up here. Let me pour my cup of coffee.
You should.
Uncle Clint's about to go on a rant.
Let me wax about this. I am going to go on a rant. And this rant is going to be, I'm going to try to parallel a coach in the SEC to give you some context of who Freeman is for Notre Dame. And I'm going to parallel him with a coach that I actually gave a lot of respect for before the season. And then a couple of losses early on made the luster, the shine kind of go away. But at the end of the season, this coach was clamoring for a playoff spot. And a lot of people said he should have gotten in because of how this team progressed. And that's South Carolina. South Carolina and Beamer. I'm going to tell you two things that are true about that team. One, that team.
This is a wild comp, by the way. I don't hate it.
And again, personality wise, that's why I said the South is different than the Midwest, folks.
Yeah.
Culture is a real thing, and I'm going to try to surgically dissect this. Shane Beamer is beloved by his team. His players love him. They will go to bat for him and play hard for him. South Carolina's getting recruits in and transfer portal guys and keeping their own fenced in a wild way, in a talent-rich state that Georgia's dipped into a number of times up at the Coastals, and gotten some very, very good players.
The fact that Lenore Sellers isn't in the transfer portal right now tells you everything you need to know about Shane Beamer. He would be the number one quarterback in the portal, could go anywhere he wanted.
And start anywhere he wanted to day one. Like, guys.
Including Georgia, by the way, Georgia fans.
That's real, okay?
Yeah.
Shane Beamer got him to stay at South Carolina, got him locked in there. They're a formidable opponent for a lot of people, and somebody who next year playoff-wise, I'd put a pretty good preseason ticket for them to get in, okay? The fan base loves him as well. Now you can go, who has South Carolina developed? What big games have they won? Well, I could say the same about Notre Dame. What players have they developed? Their big tight end, all-world guy hasn't played that well over in Oakland, actually got outshined by Brock Bowers and a guy over there. Okay. Notre Dame doesn't have a number of notable people that are in the league blowing it up, and the coach hasn't won big games yet. They're the same type of coach, just taking on a wild cultural perspective. Freeman is the Midwest version of Shane Beamer. So what I'm trying to tell you is his team loves him. His biggest attribute for this team is similar-esque to Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart can develop and get talent. That's what sets him apart from a lot of people. But it's also his speeches and his excitement and his love and togetherness for players that makes Kirby Smart the best coach in college football. That's what everybody says. Everybody talks about. Parents of recruits and students love this guy so much. Freeman has that in him as well. And Shane has it in. Shane Beamer likens himself after Kirby Smart. I know that makes no sense because they're nowhere near the same, but he's following in his footsteps. Marcus Freeman is doing the same thing, just with a little bit more Notre Dame proper prim and Midwest austerity, Midwest stoicism. Guys, don't think of Marcus Freeman as a joke of a coach. He can get these guys up for any game. And now they got the talent and the belief because they just bludgeoned a playoff team at home. And they are coming in with all the confidence, all the excitement, and all the belief in the world. And it starts with Freeman giving it to them. So I want to warn you. Yes, he hasn't won the biggest games. Yes, he's kind of a nobody that came up out of obscurity. But guys, they have ingratiated themselves to him, and he has that team on the edge of their seat every single time. And if he gets something going, you best believe they're not going to quit on him. So Georgia, if we're going to win, we got to pile it on them for 4 quarters. This is not an SMU. This is not an Indiana where they get punched in the mouth and they taste their blood and they're like, ooh, this sucks. They're going to keep coming after it and play hard. And it's going to be a kind of a knock back, drag out, back and forth fight with these guys every game. That's my biggest big picture.
First of all, I would love to acknowledge and just say that I see you to the Notre Dame fans that are screaming Kyle Hamilton's name at Clint right now when he said Notre Dame hasn't put any successful players in the league. Sure. Congratulations on naming the successful player that you put in the league. Kyle Hamilton's a heck of a safety, heck of a football player.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say of all the teams in the college football playoff, Georgia is about to have to face the 2 of them because Penn State is going to wax Boise State, guys.
Gosh, so bad.
They are going to wax Boise State. Okay. Georgia's about to have to play, hopefully, if we win the first game, the 2 teams in the college football playoff that have the largest chip on their shoulder of all the teams. The teams that feel as though they should be among the elites of college football, but are consistently spoken about as lesser tier, sub, never quite as good as the SEC, never quite as good as Ohio State, never quite as good as the rest of college football, always the tier below. And if you don't think Marcus Freeman and James Franklin wear that like a sweater, you are a fool. They feed off of that. They are motivated by that. And Georgia, because Alabama's not in this playoff and they're a has-been program that is deceased, I don't have to be the one to tell you that Oregon ain't the program that everybody's looking at as the big boy in this playoff. It ain't the number 1 seed Oregon Ducks who have won a national championship. Not recently. No, it ain't them. It's Georgia that everyone looks at as the Goliath of these playoffs.
Yeah.
Because Kirby Smart's the best coach in the game, because Kirby Smart has done it year after year after year, because Kirby Smart has got back-to-back national championships under his belt in 21-22. So that's the program that everybody's looking at. And now you match that team up with the 2 teams that are the hungriest to prove that they belong in that conversation, that they are not second to anybody. It is, I'm not going to say it's a dangerous spot for Georgia, and it's the college football playoff. So of course you're going to get somebody's best shot. I'm not even saying like you're going to get their best shot. That's a dumb analysis take.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is it's an interesting spot for Georgia to be in. Whereas I think you look at a team like Oregon and they've got teams like Ohio State and Texas waiting in the wings. Neither of those teams believe that Oregon is viewed as a superior program to them.
Nope.
Neither of them are so they're going to be playing with a lot of confidence.
Yes.
Because they think they can beat Oregon, but they're not going to be playing with this edge and this chip on their shoulder like Ohio State did against Tennessee.
Yes.
Coming out of the gate and with all the disrespect and all the Ryan Day talk and all the whatever. And they came out and said, well, what if we just beat the heck out of this SEC team and leave no doubt?
Yeah.
Penn State and Notre Dame are going to be coming in with that kind of an attitude into this game. And that is an interesting spot for Georgia to be in.
100%. I still remember to this day, I remember as a child walking into, some of us didn't have the N64 first kid on the block with the Super Nintendo or the N64 the first time to their friends. Some of us had to shop at Ross as children.
Sorry, should I settle up again for another? Is this another one? Is this another? Is the Midwest involved in this somehow?
No. The Midwest is not involved in this. But I remember walking through Ross and looking at Notre Dame gear and wondering, are they a local team? I did not live anywhere near Indiana.
Yeah.
Are they a local team? Why is their merchandise at discount store? It's because every single year they were the discounted little brother that were like, oh, yeah, it's sweet. Like we have a bunch of, oh, there's a thumb down. Oh, that's sweet. But no. They got a chip on their shoulder in a big way, and they have a lot of momentum. They have one of the best running backs in college football right now, today. Now, I'm not talking about football. Today, one of the best running backs, because when he gets to that second level, Daniel, you saw it. Ooh, he got some jets.
Like, he turns it on.
He outran two cornerbacks who, I don't know if you understand roster composition. Your fastest players play on the outside.
Yeah.
He outran them like they were standing still. And it was concerning to me. I took notice. We're going to come back after this, talk about more things. First look ahead, but first, these. And of course, it's FanDuel. FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook of Locked On Bulldogs, Locked On Podcasts everywhere. We love them. We'll be down in New Orleans making all manner of bets, prop, over-unders, point totals, spreads. It's going to be wild, and FanDuel is going to be the spot that we get. Right now, the game started off as a pick'em. It went to 1 and then 1.5, Georgia favored. It's going to consistently move over and over and over again, but that's okay. Just go to FanDuel.com, and they're going to have every single thing that you need. And right now, a $5 bet that you win, you get $250. That's $250 in bonus bet straight to your account with a $5 wager that wins. FanDuel.com, make every moment more.
Clint, I think the last big picture topic to cover, which I briefly mentioned earlier, but I think is relevant, is the comparison of the way these two teams reached the place that they are right now. And this is where, as a Georgia fan, I'm going to continue to feed into the narrative that you have heard and that you are purporting, which is that Notre Dame hasn't played anybody. Because Notre Dame fans, you know this is true, right? You know this. You haven't played anybody this year. And that's okay, because you've beaten almost all of the teams that you played, and I am on record as saying the team that you lost to is irrelevant in this conversation. So based on my own calculations, you've beaten everybody that you have played. It's just that the teams that you've played aren't very good. Like, collectively are actually pretty bad. Like, the best teams that you've played are service academies who only do one thing and are really, they're very good at taking advantage of teams that are not ready to stop that one thing. And they're very bad at, wait for this, everything else. Literally about playing football.
All other aspects.
Okay. So, it's not an impressive resume.
No.
Georgia, on the other hand, has beaten Tennessee, a college football playoff team, Clemson, a college football playoff team,
There it is,
and Texas twice, a college football playoff team. 4 wins over teams that made the college football playoff. Their 2 losses coming on the road at Alabama, a game in which they barely lost the game after fighting their way back, and on the road at Ole Miss, a team that I think even Notre Dame fans would agree is pretty good. A team that's certainly better than any team that Notre Dame played this year. So Georgia has been tested. Notre Dame has not been tested. You mentioned the resiliency, the love for the coach, the way that Notre Dame is going to fight, Clint. And I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I will say that if this game, I'm not saying Notre Dame has played tight games. They played a tight game at Louisville.
I was just going to say, the three tightest games are these. Here they go.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Louisville 24, Notre Dame 31. The second closest game. Notre Dame, USC, Notre Dame 49, USC 35. I'm taking out the Indiana playoff game because, as you suggested, Daniel, that
it was a blowout.
It was a blowout. It was not.
Indiana scored 3 points in the first 3 quarters, guys. That's not. I will hear nothing about.
Game 1, Notre Dame 23, Texas A&M 13. Those are the three closest games they've had, Daniel. Louisville, not a good conference, not a good squad. USC having every single person hit the portal. Nobody wants to be there. A&M is A&M. Like, I don't need to tell you people who A&M is. They are bad.
Yeah, so I'm not saying it's not an impressive win against A&M,
No.
but I am saying Ole Miss is better than A&M.
Yeah.
Full stop. Okay. If this game is tight, I am not suggesting that Notre Dame is going to quit.
Okay.
But I am suggesting that Georgia has a gene that we have no idea if Notre Dame possesses. And I mean, we do know that they weren't able to win a close game against Northern Illinois. The closest game of the year, Clint, which you failed to read, was the Northern Illinois game, and they weren't able to win that game. So I am suggesting that if this game is tight and Georgia has a tendency, I mean, get your buckets ready, to play tight games. Unfortunately, that is Georgia's thing, especially in the first half. If I could bet that this game was within a touchdown at halftime, if I could find that on FanDuel, Clint, do you have any idea how much money I would wager on that proposition?
All the monies.
If this game is tight, Georgia has proven, even with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback, Georgia has proven against good teams, teams on the level of Notre Dame, that they are able to hang in and persevere and give their best when their best is called for.
Yeah.
Notre Dame has no idea if they can do that or not because A, they've not played a team like Georgia this year. Georgia has played a team like Notre Dame this year. And B, they've not been in a game like this game all year long. And so they would have no way of knowing, Clint.
Yeah, it's like championship boxing or fighting. You can play a lot of 3-round UFC games. You can box a lot of 6-round boxing matches. But when you're asked to go 12 rounds or 5 rounds in the UFC or 12, 13, 14, like you start catching up on these, it gets ridiculous because that's when you go into deep water. They call it deep water, and it is a whole different thing. When that undercurrent grabs you and you have to have the mental fortitude, and we've said the biggest thing Georgia has this year, the number one asset we have above every other team, Kirby recognized it, we recognize it, we see it, is mental fortitude on this. I'm just going to go to the Louisville game really quick and talk about how lucky Notre Dame is in this game. And just say that the mental fortitude in that game, margin of victory was so wafer thin. Louisville had more total yards, more passing yards, more rushing yards, and a yard per play, 5.2, the same as Notre Dame. They had better third down efficiency. They had more plays. The problem was they had an interception that was thrown. They had more time of possession, and they had a couple of execution points of emphasis that didn't work out for Louisville. Louisville, by all accounts, was dominating that game against Notre Dame. Now, that should give you excitement as a Georgia fan because this team, Notre Dame, has progressed. But even in that aspect, they went to deep water against Northern Illinois and against Louisville.
Yeah.
Who is Georgia Tech's better than both those teams?
Look, right now. Georgia went to deep water against Kentucky, and they went to deep water against Georgia Tech. It's not necessarily an indictment on the team.
No.
The indictment on the team is that Georgia has played teams as good as Notre Dame.
Correct.
Notre Dame has not played teams as good as Georgia. No. I'm not saying they're not clutch. I'm just saying there's no way for Notre Dame fans to know if they are or not. Meanwhile, Georgia fans can absolutely be confident that if this game is close down the stretch, Georgia's got what it takes to win it.
Yes.
That's all.
100%. That's what we're saying. We're going to talk more about some big key features in this just in. Notre Dame is down the best defensive player that
we didn't
they've
even mention
seen
it.
in
we'll
a
mention it.
hot
It's not
minute.
good. It's not good.
His performance on passing downs, I don't know how to say this. He's one of the best in the entire nation on a havoc rate on passing downs. It's going to be a huge thing for them to hurdle. He is Daniel. I'm Clint. We're going to be back on Monday talking all things Georgia football. As we lead up to the Sugar Bowl, we'll be live there. We will see you guys then.
See ya.